Good afternoon from the Philippines. Good morning, good evening from other parts of the globe. My name is Jean Hardeleza Mijares, and I will be serving as your host for today's session. It is my honor to welcome you all to the first session of our webinar series, Climate Voices on the Ground Perspectives from Different Sectors. Today's inaugural session is titled Community Solidarity, the Roots of Resilience, with our guest speaker, Professor Emma Porio. The webinar series is organized by the My Climate Risk Ateneo de Manila University Regional Hub, which is hosted by the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability. My Climate Risk, or MCR, is a lighthouse activity of the World Climate Research Program, which aims to develop and mainstream a bottom-up approach to regional climate risk. This starts with a better understanding of local context and the requirements of decision makers. Hence, our webinar series, where we will explore the different contexts and experiences of climate change. Just some reminders before we start. Please note that the program is being recorded on Zoom. On Zoom, all participants are muted automatically as they enter the meeting room. Throughout the session, kindly type in any comments or questions in the chat box here on Zoom, and participants via Facebook Live may also type in their comments or questions in the comments section. We will gather these later on for the open forum. And finally, there will be an evaluation survey at the end of the session. Requests for e-certificates may be made through the same form. At this point, we would like for everyone to settle in, and we'll start with an ecumenical prayer to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Let's pause in silence for a few moments. Interfaith prayer for our climate. We hold the earth. We hold siblings who suffer from storms and droughts intensified by climate change. We hold all species that suffer. We hold world leaders delegated to make decisions for life. We pray that the web of life may be mended through courageous actions to limit carbon emissions. We pray for right actions for adaptation and mitigation to help our already suffering Earth community. We pray that love and wisdom might inspire my actions and our actions as communities, so that we may, with integrity, look into the eyes of our siblings and all beings and truthfully say we are doing our part to care for them and the future of the children. May love transform us and our world with new steps toward life.
Magiliw, pelas ang sinanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiin. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituing at araw na kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhating pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hinigaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Now, to formally welcome everyone to today's session, we would like to call on Dr. Charlotte Kendra Gotanco Gonzalez, the Director of the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability and focal point of the My Climate Risk Ateneo de Manila University Regional Hub, to deliver the opening remarks.
Good afternoon, colleagues and friends. Welcome to this inaugural session of the webinar series, Climate Voices on the Ground, Perspectives from Different Sectors. This series is one of the activities of the Hub hosted by the Ateneo under the World Climate Research Program's lighthouse activity called My Climate Risk. As the Hub leaders and representatives have agreed, the most important word in My Climate Risk is arguably my. We hope to bring to the fore different people's experience of climate variability and change, their views of the past, present, and of our possible futures, so that climate information can be made more meaningful at the local scale. After all, humans and ecosystems reside in local climates, not in global averages. And that's a quote from Marland et al. From a 2003 journal that inspired me to pursue this line of work. And of local cultures and contexts, indeed, there is a diverse spectrum. And while it may not be possible to grasp all, we can at least try to broaden our perspectives. Because indeed, one of the most important habits of systems thinkers is that of changing perspective to increase understanding. And coming from a research standpoint, we might find that the climate variables we test in our models take on a different meaning on the ground, or that stakeholders have different concerns or information needs other than what we might assume is important, or even that there are potential opportunities we haven't considered. But more importantly, empathy begins with understanding life from another person's perspective. That's a quote from actor Sterling K. Brown. So I think it's perhaps with this sense of empathy that we can better collaborate and co-produce solutions to the climate problem. In today's talk, we will hear from someone who has had extensive experience with immersing in and collaborating with local communities and organizations across different sectors, from local to national government to non-government organizations and civil society to research and the academe. For our inaugural lecture in this series, Professor Emeritus Dr. Emma Porio will be sharing with us her insights on climate and disaster resilience stemming from her work with community-based organizations. I look forward to the insights we might draw from this and the following sessions in this series, which might bring us closer as a community seeking to build climate resilience at all levels.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gotanco Gonzalez. It is now my pleasure to introduce the speaker for today's session. Dr. Emma Porio is professor of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology in Ateneo de Manila University and Science Research Fellow in the Manila Observatory. She is president of the International Sociological Association, Clinical Public Sociology Division, and of the Asia Pacific Sociological Association. Professor Porio is the editor of the Journal of Frontiers and Sustainable Cities Frontiers, based in London, principal editorial advisor of the Environment and Urbanization Asia edition, and review editor of the Journal of the Cities of the Global South. In 2001 and 2022, she was listed as one of the most highly cited social scientists in the Philippines, according to the AD Scientific Index. She led the conceptualization and implementation of the transdisciplinary action research project called Coastal Cities at Risk, Investing in Climate and Disaster Resilience in the Philippines, or CCAR-PH, from 2017 to 2021. Currently, she's spearheading the institutionalization of the CCAR-PH scientific findings in the academia with the Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience degree program in Ateneo, as well as with local governments, national government agencies, civil society, and private sector in partnership with Ateneo de Manila University, the Manila Observatory, and the National Resilience Council. She's the co-chair of the Climate Change Commission's Philippine National Panel of Technical Experts, as well as adjunct research fellow in the Center for Social Wellbeing Studies of the Institute for the Development of Social Intelligence in Senshu University, Japan. In June 2022, she was elected to co-chair with South Africa the International Climate Council Network Adaptation Workstream. Professor Porio has a long history of leading research consortia, such as the Global Urban Research Initiative in Southeast Asia, Ateneo de Manila University's Environment, Society, and Sustainable Development Research Cluster, and the Asian Social Wellbeing Research Consortium, just to mention a few most notable ones. She was previously chair of the Philippine Social Science Council and vice chair of the 13th Division of the National Research Council of the Philippines. We are very honored to have Dr. Emma Porio here. Everyone, let us please give her a virtual round of applause. Professor Porio, the floor is now yours.
May I share screen? Thank you, Jean. Very generous introduction. Let me just share my screen first. Just a moment. Okay. I would like to thank the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, in particular Dr. Kendra Gutangco Gonzalez and her excellent team who are very good in organizing this series, following up with me. I don't think I could have been here today without all those support that your team has provided. Thank you very much. Also, I'd like to thank the Ling Po Foundation, the Local Government Academy, and the Department of Interior Local Governments, and the local governments of Itbayat and its wonderfully generous people. I call them, the Ibatans are the climate adapted people of the world, I'd say. So I'm very grateful. It was a very hectic field work, but it was worth it. I always tell my friends that this work on the ground and with local governments is quite tiring, but it is what nurtures my soul. My volunteer work with the local government and communities, it allows me to, work more than the 12, 15 hours because I get inspired by their work. So thank you very much. And I would like to also say that the work that I have been doing with the coastal cities at risk in the Philippines, and I'd like to thank again Kendra for partnering with us, has been really nurtured with all our partnerships with many organizations. You can see their logos here. Also, I think if I can see in my presentation, what really supports excellent initiatives on the ground are really the contributions of so many at the micro, meso, and macro level. So today, I would like to share with you my sort of relatively distilled experiences with communities who have been forging strategic solutions, climate solutions to their disaster risk. And I will start basically by talking about community solidarity, the roots of resilience. A case study of Itbayat's Yaru, a whole of society approach to climate change adaptation and disaster resilience, risk reduction. The Itbayat risk, I would say, the Itbayat resilience is very much anchored under history, culture, and tradition. The resilience has been embedded in their lifeways, in their institutional structures and practices. You can see intimate knowledge of their environment, their knowledge about the seas, their shores, flora and fauna, and how they have formulated their life strategies against the harsh typhoons, earthquakes, and the pandemic. Yaru is really the word for collective labor exchange. I would say collaborative labor exchange. In other cases, say that it's but and as opposed to the Bayanihan efforts in some communities, Yaru is year-round. So I will show you some pictures. So before I go on to I just entertain you with pictures. My outline, of my talk really is, I would say it was shaped by Odette. After Odette, I went to Cebu and I was shocked that this city, which is one of the richest province and city in the Philippines, was without water, no electricity, and no and food security was quite challenged. So I would say that if there's anything about, climate and disaster preparedness, this nexus. So in Itbayat, I think we can learn that really the roots of resilience is really intimately connected to their geography, culture, and their knowledge for survival and resilience. Their intimate connectedness to the environment, to the local and formal knowledge of flora and fauna, and the climate weather elements. Also, the Yaru as a strategy is adapted to the seasons and the cycles of preparedness. About, Yaru really as a whole of society approaches RR, and also as a foundation for climate resilience, focus on the proactive early warning system, the proactive preparedness for food security, the proactive preparedness for energy and water, and it's embedded in the cycle of activities according to season and livelihood activities. And then it's institutionalized in the CCADR planning and investments by LGUs, provincial, municipal, and community solidarity groups. And I'd say that, all of this alongside with the other groups, they are really focusing on the transformational lens and that allow the community to be self-sufficient and, resilient. And then I'll close with my what I call ways forward in our capacity building for resilient and sustainable present and future. As Dr. Kendra has emphasized, the emphasis on my climate, it means that it's us with the people, with the officials, and if we own our climate patterns, our climate strategies, then we will be able to prepare for a sustainable future. So geography and climate and culture. So Itbayat is one of the 3 big islands in Batanes. It's located, if you see there, it's located between Taiwan and Babuyan Islands. It's in red. And then it has around 10 islands. The 3 big islands are Sakdang, Batan, and Itbayat. Itbayat is 90 miles from Taiwan and 25 miles from the capital of Bascod in Batan Island. And I put that because until late 1990s, fishing, poaching of fishery resources was very popular among external poachers, and it only got stopped when the marine was stationed in one of the islands in Itbayat. I think that's very important in terms of, guarding our environmental resources, especially marine and sea resources. So what I found in Itbayat, really, that the people have practical knowledge about their flora, fauna, and climate elements. And also, together with the Pag-asa weather advisor, it guides the Ibatan's daily practice and preparedness. In fact, one of my interviewers said, the ordinary Ibatan wakes up looking at the sky and looking at the formations of the clouds, the color of the clouds, and from the movement of the clouds, you can tell the direction of wind. And he does that also at sunset or in the early morning to see what kinds of activities he can do today. So for example, the Itbayaten Kadoray flower really flowers when the oncoming rainy season, when rains, especially rains will come, and the Arios tree beside it, you can see the Arios tree, the green buds of the Arios becomes numerous when there are rains. And then also we know that the migratory birds are signal for the amihan and whatever season it is, and depends on the kind of migratory birds that there are. So also the timing of the agricultural activities, with moonrise and the tides and low tides with the Earth's gravity, which is affected by the Earth's gravity by the moon. So this is Kedoray on the left, and you have the Arios on the right. And you can see Arios lines up in Itbayat. How many of you have been to Itbayat? May I know? Okay, go there. they will teach us a whole lesson on being sufficient. Anyway, so you can see here, there are all Arios trees around the municipal hall of Itbayat. And they always tell me that after every storm, only the Arios are standing up, and they regularly prune it so that it can stand, it can stand the wind and the others. So this is picture I took on October 5, and as I said, the weather, it means the weather is good, although in our flight to Itbayat, 20-minute flight or something like that, I prayed because the wind, there's some turbulence, and I thought I'd fall into the sea and I'll be eaten by, and told myself, if I'm eaten up by by some, pating, the whales there, I will not, my family will not be able to bury me, right? Anyway, but we survived, but it was stressful, short flight. But we were lucky. That was the only time of the week that there was an airplane. But had we taken the boat, it will take us 3 to 4 hours. And there is really no proper wharf because of the rough terrain. So you will go into a cage wherein the crane will fetch you and put you on. So lucky I didn't have that experience. So this is the clouds that was taken by the DLG operations officer. It took it 2 years, 2 weeks ago, and it's really the night before a very big storm hit. So in fact, Charmaine Gato said, "Ma'am, this is called ragjagdag," and that's the Ibayat term, and the fast changing color of the skies indicates a coming bad weather. And then also, you'll see on the left the Sabtang side of the Batan shores on fair weather, especially now during Amihan. And then on the right, on the picture on the right side is the Batanes shore on the Pacific Ocean side. You can not fish here because of the big waves coming from the Pacific and also the big stones and the like. Our tour guide, an American, tried to do some surfing there because of the waves, and he ended up hurt because of the big stones. In order to promote also your well-being and your strategies for living well in that island. We were there in the Sabtang site, and suddenly we were there on the hill. A fisherman comes up, and then when I look at his catch, I was so impressed. You can see that's one of the biggest octopus I've ever seen, and have I been in Manila, I would have bought the whole catch. But really, it tells you about sustainable fishing. He just caught this through spear fishing. So fishing gears are quite regulated in Batanes in terms of making sure that it's not extractive. It's only, it's sustainable for local use and the like. So the other thing I think is very popular. A lot of people like to, put this in a tour. This is really a fantastic gear, both for sunrise, for working on sunny days as well as on rainy days. I tried it, and you will see that at the back, when you wear it, the back will cool your body. If rains come, the rain will just slide over. Okay, so I'd say that lifestyles and work are very much embedded into using natural elements, and certainly if you do this, there will be no plastic pollution in this island. So now we go to the bandillo, or the announcements. The announcements are either done, it is announced through the loudspeaker system, but it's also printed, and this one is an early warning system of the drought and the drying up of the well. And here in the bandillo, it also instructs the local people what to do, how to be patient, like this one patient, some parts are being now reached by the water and things like that. But the next Bandilio, you can see here, the Bandilio on August 23, it talks about signal number 1 in Batanes. It also exhorts the people to prepare. And then the Bandilio in September 1, it tells you how Henry is approaching the islands and they must really prepare. Okay, so you can see here, this is September 3. After the Bandilio, the people there were, they go to the port and race, get the big boats in the sea up to the ground to preserve it. You can see here, so because there are fishermen and also people who ply the ferry between Basco and Etbayat, uses this boat. So you can see that they raise it. It's a backbreaking work. So all the men must collaborate and bring the boats up to the high ground. After the storm, some roads were destroyed. So they also work together. So you look at the character of the sea. Here you can see the sea is really very bad, and then after that you can see it's calm. And so extremes of the weather is really very normal in Batanes, so you have to adjust accordingly. So they're repairing the roads or the pier for fisher folks, and then also the roads. So here the other collaboration that really is very important is constructing houses. And this particular case, it's constructing sheds for goats and cows. In preparation for the rainy season, they have to construct, and they always say that we have to help each other, because if you don't help each other, then you will not be able to finish the work on time. So you can also see that they also use for food security. They also do collaborative labor exchange, yarrow, and planting garlic or rice, which are the main crops that they raise. Here you can even see some of the local officials being with the community farmers. These are yarrow for building houses. It's very durable. The houses are composed of 8 layers of kogon and reeds, and it takes a particular skill to do that. And so this one is reinforcing the Etbayat Provincial Hospital before a storm. And on the right, you can see that they're helping in getting the logs from the mountains. And then this is after the earthquake. This is the Baptist church that was destroyed by the earthquake. It's the first strongest earthquake. I was interviewing somebody who was already 102 years old. He said it's the strongest earthquake he could ever remember in her lifetime. So, and every yarrow or collaborative labor exchange is really supported with a food feast. You look at the feast that they have, it's really made up on your rice, tubers, and the food is put on the food is put on the atepo leaf, and it really preserves the food. In fact, I was given a taro and I couldn't eat it. They have so much big servings. I just wrapped the taro with the atipo tree and actually atipo leaf, and it lasted. I was in Etbayat on a Friday, on a Thursday, and on Friday and Saturday it was still preserved. So this is here, the mayor here, the DILG here, and then the congressman here, and then from the DILG. So that's all about Etbayat and their strategies for living with climate and disaster risks. I will now show you some of our partnership with with umantasan ng lungsod ng Muntinlupa. We did a participatory community risk assessment with them using the REDAS data as well as CBMS data, and they did a community profiling, and which leads into the community planning and disaster resilience investments. So here on the right, you can see the integrated community food program. On the bottom, you can see Buklod Tao. So also another partner of ours, Buklod Tao, incorporated and the resilience initiatives. By the way, Buklod Tao is the MDRR laboratory. Dr. Kendra and I, formulated this massive disaster risk and resilience, and the one characteristic of it is that we partner with communities, local governments, national governments, and CSOs and other academics to provide instruction and learning in the classroom. So here you can see Canoli teaching the community how to do, the community and the youth how to do a risk mapping. On the right, I was working with the Casa Bayanihan. Casa Bayanihan had its field in Sitio Payong. Too bad that they have to leave because of the martial law. This is the integrated community food program in Valenzuela and Disciplina Bignay. And during the pandemic, they did organize a community pantry for other urban poor communities. And the St. James Cook University, where I wrote a case study on the initiatives of the poor. They were so impressed with the picture that the urban poor women will also organize a community pantry for other urban people, and so they put their picture in the launch of the COVID-19 Tropics State of the Tropics Focus Report in last June. And so the women were so happy that they appeared in the international material. Anyway, so now we move on to Tambalisa Island, which is was the site of Justine C's dissertation, Tambalisa Island in Concepcion. And one of his key findings really is that you have to integrate traditional and scientific knowledge for adaptive resilience innovations. Okay, it's very important to listen. Just like in Itbayat, people really utilize their knowledge about the environment. Just like here in Tambalisa Island, people basically look at the weather, look at the clouds, look at the behavior of flora and fauna, and trying to see what the weather would be like and whether they should go to the sea. I remember I was interviewing one time a fisherman in Giwan, in San Pedro Tonasan and Giwan, and a fisher folk was telling me there's a saying that says a beautiful sunset is a fisherman's nightmare, because the orange and the sunset really reflects the heat, and that's why it tells you why there will be a storm or bad weather the following week. Okay, so also they use in Tambalisa Island, they use bayanihan or yaro, in doing both projects. They also use their knowledge with their local indigenous knowledge or scientific knowledge from the NGOs and local government to formulate their community disaster preparedness plan. So I'd say, this would say, yeah, they own their climate knowledge and they input it to their planning and investment pattern as well. So I'd say I like very much Moser's framework on the 6 conditions of systems change. He says that what are the 6 conditions? There should be policies, practices, and resource flows. For this to work, the relationships, connections, and power dynamics and the mindsets must be all united. Okay, so same thing in terms of the framework for transformative adaptation. You will understand. I think if you look at all these community-based initiatives, they very well understand the drivers of vulnerability, how to reduce their vulnerability, how to prepare basically so that their damage and losses will not be so big, when the typhoon or the storm comes. Also, I think embedded in all these community-based practices, in partnership with the LGUs and the Pag-asa, you will see that the resilience matrix of local governments and communities formulated by the National Resilience Council in partnership with CCAR-PH and other scientists from other parts of the country. It basically argues that leadership and governance for resiliency is a foundational factor. Leadership must be committed, and it must share its decision-making with empowered stakeholders, and there must be integrated development planning and implementation and evaluation. And if you do that, you'll have the immediate outcomes of the human development, local economy, infrastructure, and environment. If you take care of all these 4 pillars, then you'll have reduced damages, reduced property damage to properties and losses, as well as reduced, deaths, and there will be development community, and there will be resilient LGUs and communities. So let me summarize by saying that how do we build our capacities in terms of becoming more resilient and sustainable? So I'd say number 1, community resilience is anchored on solidarity, unity of the people, community, and government support. Resilient and sustainable practices must be embedded in the lifeways, institutional collaborative practices of multi-layered stakeholders. And also, we must have respectful integration of traditional and scientific knowledge for adaptive resilience. We must also subscribe to the principles of co-production, co-creation, co-ownership, and co-benefits. We must also subscribe to the Pareto principle, which is 20% input, 80% output, and we must navigate effectively the systems and stakeholders so that we can reach our common goal of adaptation and resilience. Also, we must really, I cannot overemphasize, unity and solidarity of the political, economic, social, and cultural institutions and practices, and the leaders that are leading them. And number 7, I'd say resilience is caring for our common home. When I was giving a lecture to the Rafi, Heritage Week last June, we were talking that what is resilience? It's really caring for our own common home. Amping, atimanon. Amping is to be careful, to take care, to value, to love, and to treat the other with respect and love. The Evatans, in fact, during our focus group, they say, because we ask them, why do you do Yaro? Why do you support each other and help each other in building the homes? And he says, because we care for each other. We support each other because we love and care for the welfare of each other. I think this is central to, resilience being stewardship, ownership, identity, and community solidarity. So that basically, I think, I would say these are my key lessons that I would like, I hope the communities, the leaders, and the local leaders, especially those from the LGUs and from the CSOs and from private sector, I hope we can work together. I think at the local level, so many times we are sectorally driven, but we really have to work like a systems now and working together so that we can be more. As I was saying in CCAR, I always say by being together, we can be more. But, to innovate is to collaborate. And to collaborate is to navigate the systems of power and relationships that we have every day. And we have to be respectful, and we have to be mindful of each other's interests and goals, and the recognition that we must work together. So again, that's my final note from the UNDRR, saying that disaster resilience is everybody's mission. As I will say, resilience building, community resilience is everybody's work, and it is an everyday work. You don't just prepare when the typhoon is coming, but every day when you get up, you prepare for food security, you prepare for energy security, you prepare for water security, so that, you know, we will have a, I would say, building a resilient and sustainable future takes a mindful heart, a conscious mind, and a committed mind, body, and spirit. Thank you. I'd like to thank this. These are my acknowledgements to the people who helped me do this. And also that, okay. I think people who work with me in SICAR is very familiar. I think Dr. Gutanco was the first one who acknowledged in his work in the publication. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Porio, for sharing with us the experience of various communities such as in Itbayat, Tambaliza, Island and Concepcion, what their climate solutions are, their systems and solidarity in addressing climate risks. At this part of the program, we are now moving to the open forum. So if you have questions or comments, please feel free to type them in the chat. We've already received a few questions sent anonymously. So the first one I'll read po. The Itbayat community seems to have quite a unique system of climate knowledge that is shaped by their context. Given that our climate systems are changing, in your work, what have you noticed how they understand this change and how this can be reconciled by their traditional knowledge?
As I showed there also in Tambalisa, and also I have other evidence from other parts of the country. That's why I always say, everything we do must be contextually driven. Therefore, we must know the context. That's why I was emphasizing the intimate knowledge to the local environment. And for example, I was really struck when I was talking to the DILG operations officer, Charmaine, which I was so surprised. She finished in UP Cebu, and she happened to be an intern in the Pagtambayayong, wherein I'm also a research advisor. And I was struck when he said, I was struck when he said, "Ma'am, if you are an Itbayatin, when you get up, you must look around and see what are the activities you can do, because the environment will tell you whether you can go fishing or you cannot go fishing, or you can go planting or like, okay? Yes, climate change have changed, and the people will tell you that. And that's why vigilance is the key. And that's, for example, in Itbayat, we arrive at 9 first our flight to Basco was delayed because of the bad weather. There were some rains, so we're delayed an hour. And in fact, I prayed. I said, please let me be matuloy, kasi kung hindi, my God, I can't go there anymore. I have so many things to do. And so we arrived there at around 9. We were supposed to arrive there at 8 o'clock, but we arrived there at 9:30, almost 10 o'clock. And then we got into the we got into the hotel, instead of hotel, hotel. And we were having our breakfast, and it rained. Can you imagine? We just came from a sunny airport, then it rained. And so we're eating. Then after 10 minutes, the rain stopped, and there's a sunny again. In fact, I took pictures. So in Itbayat and other places, the weather change is so rapid. And in fact, I think that's why I got a little bit of the flu, because of this extreme weather, raining and then hot and the like. So when you ask me, how do we adjust? It is very hard. For example, in Carding, remember, you saw a farmer there picturing his, I don't know how many hectares of rice, which is due for harvest in 2 weeks' time. And so the farmer was saying, take a good look at it, because in a few hours this will be gone. And I was thinking, can't we not harvest them and then make, a recipe out of this young rice? And I think I think some communities are doing that already. They harvest early and just make preparation, cook something like that. But it's slow in coming. So I would say that the farmers down there and the fisher folks down there are actually doing the rapid adjustment, because if they don't adjust, they will die. I mean, if you don't have food. So for example, in Batanes, there's a decision of who will migrate out, because the carrying capacity of the island with the food available is limited. And so there is a dialogue within the household, across households, in terms of trying to looking at environmental migration as a solution, and then remittances come back. So also I think we have to adjust, in terms of our ways of consuming things. For example, I think we have been heavily investing our research on rice, but we also know that eating rice, the unlimited rice, has led to diabetes. So I'm thinking that perhaps one of the strategic adjustments we should do is to shift our carbohydrate source to complex carbohydrates like saba, kamuting kahoy, tubers, and the like. So it's really, I think we have to do a lot of rethinking. We cannot be business as usual in our lifestyle, in our ways we consume. We have a consumption-driven lifestyle that I think we can learn a lot from the people on the ground. I mean, I was struck basically by Batanes. It's very clean and there's no plastic. And it's because they use, local products, and it even leads to, for example, in the Yaru feast, the food is wrapped with these leaves. After that, you make a compost out of it. And so it's part of the circular economy. I really think that we have to study closely in what ways we can practice circular economy. I'm sorry, I hope I answered you at least partly, to whoever was, asking the question, but I do believe that climate, our people, some of are adjusting already. It's just that our institutions, our bureaucracies are very slow. For example, I was talking about that we know that propagules in reforesting mangroves, local propagules have a higher survival and like that. But then, the formal and informal systems of procurement are not really in harmony very well. So I think it takes a lot of adjustment on the part of bureaucracies, on the part of formal structures, formal policies, formal program designs, and the like. So you have to be adept. I think now when you say, what is my climate now? It means that you should be able to, change fast, land on your feet. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so to be on your toes, communities
Yeah.
are already adapting, but it seems that our policies and systems need to catch up to that very quick process of adaptation. Related po, there's another question here. This time it's from Mr. Carlo Eleponga. He says, thank you for the discussion, and he asks, can the experiences you shared on the best practices or resilience be replicated in the urban setting, or is it because there is something unique with the Itbayat in their community?
I showed you the integrated community program group. That's a group of, Disciplina Bignay is 3,000 families relocated from the Tolihan River because of Ondoy. They were displaced by Ondoy. But of course, that housing is really a rental housing by the local government. So it's the way the local government provided housing resilience to the displaced urban poor, and then provided land for agriculture. And a lot of those women really do volunteer work in terms of raising vegetables, and their vegetables are really to be used by the feeding program of the city. So that's an example for that. And also the example of Canoli and the youth group. Canoli is now working with the San Mateo local government and the Banaba local government. So I think we should always look at cases as cases to learn from. not to replicate. We can never replicate. That's why I always emphasize contextually driven solutions, because what works for another place and a different context might not work in the current context. So I want to emphasize that contextually driven solutions. When I in MDRR, Doc Kendra and I is fond of saying our tagline is problem focused, solutions driven with a systems lens. Okay, so I think we can learn from other cases, but it is us who should formulate, you recraft it that is appropriate, angkop, angkop to the situation, and it will also be supported. So and the best way to do that is to let the people formulate in partnership, of course, with those who have resources and with those who regulate their behavior through the CCADRR planning and structures. Okay, I hope I really don't believe in replication. There's no such a thing.
Thank you, Doc Emma. So you mentioned earlier that the women played a role. Here's another question. From what you have seen of the Itbayat community, does their traditional knowledge of climate have a gender lens? That is, do women play a prominent role in decision making?
If you look there, and that I was struck in that picture, these pictures were given to me by the DRR Itbayat, and the DILG. You see there that even in you saw that in the pier, in the repair of the roads, the women were not there. But then in the repair of the roads in the inside, in the internal part of the island, there were some women workers. But in this Yaro or Bayanihan collaborative projects, the women always do the preparation of the food. And preparation of the food, if you look there, they're the ones who cook, prepare it, and then serve it. And the men will come, like when we were there, the men came from constructing that shed for the goat, like that. So, but the women basically, like for example, the municipal local government operations officer, together with the planner. The planner was a woman, and she was very clear about how they integrate local knowledge into the gender division of labor and assignment of tasks, and also about resources, accountability, and really distributing the tasks. In fact, the governor is a woman, and he was the one who said, "Oh, we basically distribute the resources according to capacity. We also, in fact, the governor who lives in Itbayat, Itbayat is the largest island of Batanes. She doesn't live in the capital. And he says, sometimes I'm the one who announce and tell the women down there, on the local leaders, the specific things about food, water, and the like, which are domestic issues. Okay. But also religion, like church activities and all these things, they're very much also part of the, shall we say, the local practices of, I would say, having confidence and strength in your own self. I mean, if you're far away from, the central place, you have to really rely on yourself. And I think if you look there in that picture of the volunteer labor after the earthquake, you can see there are children, women, and elderly. And also, even in Yaro, everyone is given a task according to what their capacity is. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Emma. Usually when we talk about climate hazard and talking about the framework, women and children and the elderly are vulnerable. We usually say that they're vulnerable, but they play very important roles.
I mean, I noticed, for example, when I was asking the Sangguniang Bayan, SB, his suggestions were very, like, for example, I asked, how do you know that a storm you have to prepare now? So his inputs were very about the clouds, like that. And then Charmaine says, No, I also about the flower. This flower will come out. So you can see that they are complementary in their observations and their knowledge and how they integrate it into their plan of action. So yeah, it was the woman who pointed out, oh, this tree you can see here. And in fact, he was telling me, oh, I in the front of Fondacion Paseta building, I saw this balete that's flowering. And it was the woman who said, you know, when these flowers, the migratory birds will come and they will eat it. And so it's a signal. So it's really, I think, I noticed it's the women who noticed about the ornamental plants and the fruits and the flowers.
The eye for detail of women really becomes very important, especially in these times. So speaking po, you mentioned that the governor being a woman, there's a question related to that. Has there been a concerted effort by the local government or congressional representative, maybe you could share of Itbayat, maybe or other communities you've worked with, to streamline their traditional knowledge into policy?
You know, I met in the when we were on flying to Itbayat, as I said, we were very lucky that that week there was an airplane. Otherwise, you know, I don't think we could have reached Itbayat. And I met Congressman Kato, and I asked him, and he says to me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "We're looking at Yaro." And he says, because it's quite, you know, it demonstrates community resilience. And then he says to me, "Yes, because resilience is in our blood." And in fact, when I was talking to the governor, was the one who asked for an audience. We asked for an audience, and he explained. He said that apparently around 2-3 months ago, they had a problem of selling their garlic because I think they were contracted by somebody, but then that somebody were not able to, you know, make angkat or buy all the supplies. So she basically announced that, you know, we have to work together, and then he called some traders and, you know, really mobilizing it so that they can sell their product. Also, I noticed with her that she said to us, you have to be sensitive. Like he says, I know a lot of people think, you know, this is all gobbledygook that we plant according to the moon phases or the high tide or low tide. But he says it has worked for us. We must plant when the phase of the moon is rising. And because, you know, he says, believe it or not, we find that those that we plant, the kamote that we plant on the moon rising is much bigger than those when we plant when the moon phase is, you know, going down, you know, when the moon is dead or something like that. Also, they observe, he thinks that, you know, planting according to the tides, you know, whether the high tide or low tide, like that. So for a governor, he says, we have learned this. This is what worked for us. So I know that in the formal knowledge system, we think those things are superstitious beliefs, right? But I was struck that the people there, the congressman, the mayor, and the governor basically thinks that, you know, we have to harmonize. This is the way you have to move with the rhythm of the environment, the rhythm of the water, the rhythm of the seas and the wind, you know, which is very real. If you're there in Basco and you're flying, my God, you know, the turbulence will make you pray forever to save your life.
Well, you mentioned that going with the rhythm of the seas and of the...
I mean, if you see that the sea is so angry, then why go down there? It will swallow you up.
Just reading from chat, maybe this was a comment earlier when you were mentioning about the farmer who was showing a video of the land that he was supposed to harvest. So from Miss Catherine Benaflor, she said, rice production is both a victim and a contributor to climate change.
That's why I think, you know, we really, I really, because I am a big I mean, I was part of the food security assessment study with Shell Habito and a brain trust, and I really think that we have to fix our eating habits. The Harvard Medical Review basically said that the American health is very poor because of eating ultra processed foods. So flour, and really rice is simple carbohydrates. And really, I think we should adjust our bodies. We're not made to consume so much simple carbohydrates and so much sugar, simple sugars. And I think the modern lifestyle, sugar is almost in everything, that in every food, processed food that we have. So so I think yes, I think but it's habit. Like I was telling our gardener who was diabetic, and I said to him, "Oh, Mang Boy, just reduce your cup of rice to 1/2." And I said, "Hindi ko kaya, ma'am." Sabi ko, it's reversible. But I think I was thinking about, about the way, like the only rice. I mean, because people think that nabusog sila pag you eat a lot of rice, but actually that's not true, I mean, I think it doesn't really give you that much energy as much as the protein and the complex carbohydrates or the vegetables for that matter.
So
I mentioned, can I just add, I mentioned, by the way, about, the food security, because I think if you look at the food security assessments, you will see that for the past 5 decades, 30% of our people are underweight, malnutrition, and it's not about affordability, because the malnutrition and underweight runs across, underweight, overweight, malnourished runs across classes. So it's about our consumption patterns, or our preferences for soft carbohydrate, for carbohydrates, soft food, for rice, and we do not have much preference for fruits and vegetables, especially local fruits and vegetables. So I think, with climate change, wherein rice is actually very much threatened, because we cannot predict anymore, like carding, it just ruined, it does not, the harvest time does not coincide with the behavior of the weather. So I think we have to adjust and find that's why I think climate resilient food systems should do things that are under the ground, like obi, kamote, tubers, yams. Because if you're stand up above the ground, then you'll be blown, it will fall down when the strong winds come. So no, I think we have to re-examine and look how we can really adjust, because there's really no other way, but we must adapt. Because if you don't adapt, then you'll not survive with the time.
Yes, but definitely.
We have catastrophic for all of us.
We have room for a few more questions. You showed earlier the bandillo system, right? In Itbayat. Could you share, Doc Emma, how long they've been using such system? Where do they get their climate information? Who synthesizes it?
If you notice, I mean, I'll focus on that the 3 bandillos. I had that translated into English. The 3 bandillos, no. They have been doing that since, I think especially when the Pag-asa also releases those typhoon advisories, and then they put there the instructions. So it tells you, and then it also tells you that, what. So this is given verbally as well as in print. So in usually in meetings, so they have the mobilization like that, and they'll say, okay, this area of Itbayat, you should be doing this, because this area like that, because the side facing the West Philippine Sea is calmer, than the side from the Pacific Ocean. And it becomes worse during storms and typhoons, where the typhoons come from the Pacific Ocean side. So you have to be aware. If you are in the Pacific side, then you have to be very clear in terms of reinforcing your house, packing up everything, getting everything out of harm's way so that they'll not be blown. So I asked the SB, and this is that we've been using that. I think when DILG required them to print, because before it was just oral. I don't know really. I can ask. We're going to. I have made a commitment, Kendra, because I asked the Sangguniang Bayan. I said, can you give me, because they were telling me that, for example, in the last, I think the September typhoon, 5 days later pa dumating ang ayuda, and that clean na lahat. So I said to them, kasi that's what they usually do. After a typhoon, right away the community cleans the debris. And that when the media daw kam, wala na, click na lang, malinis na. So I told them, can you please give me a picture? And this is, oh ma'am, we just clean, we don't take. I said, please do. And in fact they said, oh, thank you, I hope we can help us with the documentation. So I said to them, I told the local government academy, can we help them, you know? How do you document? Just in pictures, and then just show like that, so that there is a precise memory, and we can learn from that event like that. So no, I do not know how long ago, but I know they told me that this is a practice, a printed one, and it's given orally through the microphone from the municipal. And also there's somebody, the DRMO, goes around house to house, you know, bandilyo. I mean, I do not know in your language, but in Cebuano, when we say bandilyo, is to announce in a loudspeaker. Yeah.
Wow.
Anything more?
Just the last question. This might be related to earlier the discussion on food systems. During the pandemic, we saw here in the Philippines some community pantries. Was that also maybe the case? Did that have to happen in Itbayat, or was that something that was experienced only in urban communities?
What is so funny? We went around in Itbayat and also even in Basco. There's no big market, but we can see that each household, you know, if you're from there, you will know who is, you know, who has extra kamote, who has extra tuber, who has extra who has extra garlic or extra rice. So also the DILG was telling me that they do inventory. They do inventory, and I think if you just stay within, there's enough food within the islands. They can, you know, for example, like kamote, the tubers, and all these vegetables, they can raise enough for their own consumption. Actually, tayo mga taga-syudad ang kawawa, no? Di ba? I mean, we're the one kawawa as far, but food security, like Cebu City was short of, you know, I remember some of the groceries got empty. It's because, you know, you're so dependent on, you know, groceries which are packed and all that stuff. But if you're used to, you know, supplying your own vegetables, fruits and vegetables, then I think, you know, they've done like that for. In fact, they told me that actually they had no COVID case until September 2021. Can you imagine? They had no COVID. So I think the food insecurity and the rising prices of fruits and vegetables is only a malady for us city folks, and it should be a lesson for us about self-sufficiency and planting what you could plant in terms of your food.
And community solidarity, right? So you were mentioning that some of them, they could just go to their neighbors, and their neighbors might have extra garlic, and then they could have some. Well, that's a very beautiful story po, Doc Emma. This is all the time that we have for the Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much too.
Thank you very much for those who sent in their questions. Sorry, I'll just clear my
Yeah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much for all those who
Okay.
sent their questions. And thank you very much, Doc Emma, for again sharing your experience with Ibayat and
Well,
other communities.
Ken, I'm proposing to my friends in the government that we should work with them and just let them devise their own, self-sufficiency. I think, we should go back to the time that there is pride in relying on your own efforts. Not always asking for help from somewhere. As my mother would put it, if you can do it, just do it,
Very empowered po. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we now move to the awarding of certificate.
Thank you very much.
So we present, Doc Emma, the certificate of appreciation to you for sharing your time and insights in this webinar titled Community Solidarity, the Roots of Resilience, held on the 14th of October 2022. Signed, Jean Hardelesa Mijares, Program Manager for Climate and Disaster Resilience of the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability, and Dr. Charlotte Kendra Gatanco Gonzalez, Director of the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability and focal point of the My Climate Risk, Ateneo de Manila University Regional Hub. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much too. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jean, and everybody at AIS. Thank you. We should think about this really, because we have 7,160 islands. Each
Yes.
of them have their own microclimate and have their own context.
Yes.
And so I'm proposing to some of my friends that we do prototypes, and I want those people in it by a hotel. I mean, because other islands, I've been to so many other islands. For people really who have, suffered long and like that, they've learned to live. You have to learn to live with their problems and also learn to live with what are available solutions. Yeah. And I think we need to, the government, the local government just have to facilitate the change. Yeah, that's why I like that transformative lens of Moser.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Doc Emma.
Okay.
Now
Hi,
to give the closing remarks, may we call on Dr. Regina Rodriguez. She is Professor of the Physical Oceanography, Federal University of Santa Catarina, Brazil, and she is the co-chair of the My Climate Risk Lighthouse activity of the World Climate Research Program. Dr. Rodriguez, the floor is now yours.
Hi, good morning for me, good afternoon for you all. Could I share my slides, or are you going to share for me? Because I'm not able to. I sent it yesterday.
Oh, we can share the slides. Or tech team, could you please give Dr. Regina co-hosting privilege? Might be better. There we are. Are you able to share your screen, Pam?
Let's see. Yes, thank you. Okay, can you see now?
Yes, we see your slides.
Okay, so it's just a quick remark. So my name is Regina Rodriguez. I'm from the Federal University of Santa Catarina in southern Brazil, and I co-chair the Lighthouse activity, My Climate Risk, with Ted Shepherd from the University of Reading in the UK. Right? I wanted to thank you for having me here to say a few words about My Climate Risk. So the new science that is pictured with My Climate Risk is not around models or observations or process understanding, but on how they are all used together within a context of a deep uncertainty. Specifically, My Climate Risk aims to develop and mainstream a bottom-up approach to regional climate risk, which starts from the decision context and the decision scale and enables relevant climate information to be brought into that context. By developing a new framework for assessing and explaining regional climate risk using all available sources of climate information, we expect that climate information will be made meaningful at the local scale. So in this sense, we've reflected, me and Ted, on the insights provided in a different context, that of economics by E.F. Schumacher, in his celebrated book Small is Beautiful from 1973, to see what light they might shed on the challenge of inverting the construction of climate information for local to regional climate risk. And Schumacher asked how economics might look if what was structured as if people mattered. So we ask the same question for climate change science, and find many parallels. And you can read it all in this paper, but one is the need to deal with the complexity of a local situation, which can be addressed by expressing climate knowledge in a conditional form. A second is the importance of simplicity, even though the situation can be complex, but we have to deal with simplicity, and deal with the deep uncertainty, which can be addressed through the use of physical climate storylines, which Dr. Shepherd is an expert. And a third is the need to empower local communities to make sense of their own situation, which can be addressed by developing intermediate technology. That's how E.F. Schumacher calls, that build trust and transparency. So that's why we proposed our structure around a non-hierarchical ecosystems of lab communities of practice, like a mycorrhizal network sharing resources rather than competing for them, and anchored by mother trees in the form of regional hubs, similar to the concept of the Wood Wide Web by Susan Simard. These are our current hubs, and I'm thrilled to have the Ateneo de Manila University through the Ateneo Institute of Sustainability as one of our hubs, sharing our principles. This is a fantastic webinar series, a safe place to drive discussions and insights from different communities, sectors, and experiences to achieve more actionable climate research. Here I quote Schumacher again: science produces climate information, but climate information is nothing by itself, is a means without an end, a mere potentiality, an unfinished sentence. Can this new paradigm help us to finish the sentence, to turn the potentiality into reality to the benefit of all? And I hope you will finish the sentence, help us to finish the sentence with this hub. I wish you all a very fruitful series. And with that, I thank you and Emma Porio for the great talk already in the first series. Thanks for being part of My Climate Risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us, even if it's very early from your region, and for leaving us with this question of finishing the sentence to turn the potentiality into reality to the benefit of all. At this point, may we request everyone to please turn your videos on for our group photo. May we ask Mr. Daniel Retilla to please facilitate the taking of the group photo.
So I'll just be taking 2 screenshots. So we have 2 screens for the panel. So if everyone can just turn their cameras on, let's see the faces of our very engaged audience today. So I know that we have a very international audience today, some from Qatar, some from the United Kingdom, and we also have Dr. Rodriguez from Brazil. So it's really a very international audience. All right, so I'll be taking the first screenshot in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. And I'll be taking a screenshot of the second page now. So please keep your lovely smiles on the screen. All right, taking the shot in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
I'd like to see my friends. Please don't go away. I have missed them. Hi, Ellen, thank you.
A great opportunity to be meeting with friends again. Thank you, Daniel, for facilitating the taking of the group photo. It's really very wonderful to see everyone's faces and smiles, and especially for those who are acquainted with each other in the call. To our dear participants, please answer the evaluation survey, which the QR code of which and the link will be posted in chat. The QR code will be showed in the share screen. So requests for e-certificates may be coursed through the same form. Thank you again, Dr. Porio, for gracing us, for being here, for doing our inaugural webinar. We would also like to thank the sign language interpreters, Ms. Edna Camilla and Ms. Annalisa Regis Tolentino. And to all of you, thank you very much for your participation in this webinar. We hope you gained fresh insights on how we can learn from communities and really appreciating solidarity on how we can bring climate information on the ground so that we can address our climate risk. Please, again, don't forget to accomplish the event evaluation form. The link, again, is in the chat. And again, requests for e-certificates may be coursed through the same form. We hope to see you again next week for the next webinar in this series. It's going to be on October 21 at 4:30 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. Here's the QR code to register for that session. It's going to be the climate information needs of coastal communities. So that is it for today's session. Thank you again, everyone, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Inyeng, may